Hello, good morning. Welcome from my behalf to eEstonia. Dear guests, dear speakers, dear ladies and gentlemen. Throughout 2020, Estonia oversaw the growth of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund and pushed for greater intergovernmental cooperation in the 3Cs region. The cooperation platform of 12 EU countries is growing stronger and becoming more and more practical. We, in Estonia, are most happy to contribute to achieving the goals of the 3Cs initiative. To keep up this momentum on the road to Sofia, where the next 3Cs summits and business forum will be held, I am glad to welcome you at today's event to emphasize the practical side of the initiative, Invest in 3Cs. The aim of the event today is to raise awareness of and create more interest in the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund by characterizing its strengths and potential and describing how the fund is managed, as well as highlighting the reasons why private investors and international financial institutions should consider investing in it. Secondly, to describe the politically inspired and commercially driven nature of the fund, provide an overview of how to successfully apply for funding, and present a case study on how this has been done. And thirdly, to introduce the fund as a viable source of financing to expand businesses in the transport, energy, and digital sectors in the 3Cs region, a market of 110 million EU citizens, that is 1/4 of the population of the EU, also with the fastest economic growth in Europe. We will also focus on the development needs of the energy and transport sector in the Baltic States, and end our virtual seminar with a high-level panel moderated by President Kersti Kaljulaid of Estonia. She leads the discussion: Is combining public and private money the future of large-scale cross-border infrastructure developments? My name is Sandra Särav, and I am your host today. One might call me the grand young lady of the 3Cs initiative in Estonia. I've been hosting the past 2 seminars, and I hope I'm a familiar face and a voice to some of you already. I do understand how digital policymaking works, having worked at the Estonian government. Additionally, I have the opportunity to also understand the business side, working at a European tech scale-up, probably familiar to many of you, Bolt. I hope you enjoyed this afternoon with me and the distinguished speakers. And now, without further ado, we will move to the first presentation, or rather a discussion, on what is the 3Cs initiative, a political perspective, with Jonatan Vseviov, Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, and Pavel Jablonski, Undersecretary of State, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Government Plenipotentiary for the 3Cs initiative. Please, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Sandra, very much. It is truly an honor and a pleasure for me to be able to welcome you all virtually here in Tallinn, where we hosted the last 3Cs Initiative Summit back in October. The 3Cs Initiative was launched almost 5 years ago by the presidents of Poland and Croatia. The initiative brings together 12 European Union member states from Central and Eastern Europe, from the Baltic to the Black to the Adriatic Sea. We're a region of more than 100 million people, and over the past few years, we've been the fastest growing part of the most important economic bloc in the world. As European Union member states, we enjoy all the freedoms that the EU grants. Over the past 30 years, all 3Cs member states have achieved incredible success, both in terms of economic development as well as with regards to building connectivity with the rest of Europe. But as we all know, developing infrastructure takes time. The level of connectivity between 3Cs states themselves and between them and the rest of Europe still lags behind. The effects of the Iron Curtain are still evident. According to the IMF, the investment gap in connectivity in our part of Europe is still more than 1 trillion euros. That gap needs to be filled. Meanwhile, connectivity has become a strategic issue. Great power politics is back. Free market-based democracy is being challenged. Nowhere else is competition between fundamentally different political and economic models as important as in the sphere of connectivity. Those who control means for that, both physical and digital, will win the 21st century. This is a truly global issue, but one that we feel here in our region as well. To be able to compete in this fast-changing world, we, the free market-based democracies, need to utilize our strengths. While our public sectors can be efficient and achieve significant results, our true strength lies in our vibrant private sector. And so, in a nutshell, this is what the 3Cs initiative is all about. We're utilizing the strength of our private sector to develop modern connectivity between our states and with the rest of Europe, to fill an investment gap that developed over 5 decades of totalitarian domination. How do we intend to do it? Well, most importantly, we've created the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund that is politically inspired but commercially driven. The fund is the main instrument for funneling private investments in true free market economy way into the transport, energy, and digital sectors within our region. This is how we utilize our strengths, by bringing the private sector on board in an area that is strategic in nature. With the 3Cs initiative, we're building a model that is obviously important for our region, but one that also, if successful, can be utilized elsewhere for strengthening trust, utilizing transparency, and the free flow of data to make large-scale cross-border infrastructure investments trustworthy and attractive to the private sector in an effort to boost economic growth, interstate cohesion, and regional security. And so, Mr. Jablonski, we're very happy to have you here with us in Tallinn, and I will gladly give the floor over to you so that you could tell us more about the practical value and the importance of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund and the initiative itself from Poland's perspective.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you all for having me here. It's indeed very important that we continuously meet and improve, enhance strengthen our relationship. And I want to thank, first of all, the Estonian government for taking up the role of being sponsor of today's event, of being one of the strongest leaders of the initiative. Last year, summit here in the same place in Tallinn was a big success, and we are very satisfied of the fact that the initiative is gaining momentum, both political momentum, but also, probably even more importantly, commercial. We are speaking today about political perspective, but as you rightly asked, this very important tool that we have, that we need to enhance, that we need to still promote, because it is very promising and yet I think not explored to its full potential so far. The 3Cs Investment Fund. We have initiated it in 2019 because we understood that it is important to have a political value, to have a political understanding, to have political goals behind international cooperation, but also to have tools that would appeal to private sector. Hence, the idea for a fund that would, as you said, be politically conceived, but then commercially driven on the basis of free market principles. And what we do with the fund, me as a politician, I only see it from the outside. I have nothing to say whether particular projects are good or bad, because they are being assessed by a board that is supervised by commercial institutions, by people who we contracted on the basis purely of pure economic approach. Its practical value is very important because it can show potential investors that if they wish to spend money here in this market, which has huge investment needs, as I said, €1 trillion assessment by the IMF, they can do it safely. Their investment is profitable. There is no political harm involved, but it is embodied in a larger goal, in a larger political goal of the 12 countries of the 3Cs initiative, but of the 12 countries that are also members of the EU. And the synergy here is very important. We do not, this initiative is not an alternative to the EU. It's an element of it. We want to enhance our cooperation, strengthen connectivity in digital, transport, energy sectors to be a stronger part of the European Union and provide better opportunities for our citizens and for foreign investors.
You, I think, framed it extremely well. The Three Seas initiative is an element of the European Union. It has a governmental aspect to it. It has a commercial aspect to it. The fund that we mainly focus at today is fully commercially driven, politically motivated, commercially driven, and last year has been extremely successful in this regard. Most Three Seas member states now contribute to the fund. The United States has pledged contributions into the fund. The fund itself has already attracted private investments and has invested in projects. One happens to be in Estonia, the other one happens to be in Poland. This is just the beginning, though. What we are focusing now on is attracting private sector capital into the fund. I hope that today's event will be useful in that regard. I'm absolutely convinced that what we have seen with regards to the fund until this day is only the beginning. We're only growing stronger and bigger. So that's one aspect of the Three Seas initiative. The other aspect of Three Seas initiative is marketing our region as a region. Yes, we are 12 sovereign states, members of the European Union, 110 million people, the fastest growing part of the European Union, and yet we are often not viewed as a region. We are not viewed as anything more than a collection of states. This needs to change. This is part of why Poland and Croatia originally, and then attracting other regional players, created the initiative. This is partly a marketing tool. Finally, it is also an important political instrument where we highlight the values and principles that we consider significant: free market economy, democracy, an instrument where governments can coordinate policies amongst themselves. This is one of the reasons why we think it is very important to further institutionalize the Three Seas initiative by creating a standing secretariat that would help sustain activity between summits. We know we are on the road to Sofia. The Bulgarian government has taken up the Three Seas initiative. I'm certain that after Sofia, other Central Eastern European capitals, other Central Eastern European countries will take up the chairmanship, if you will. But practical work between governments needs to continue between summits as well, which is why I'm especially glad to note that we have now initiated a number and conducted a number of governmental level, expert level meetings between the Three Seas countries. So even though we've achieved great success, we are only beginning. This is an initiative with significant potential, with what I would say also global relevance, and I'm absolutely optimistic about its chances of success. Now, Estonia hosted the last summit, but Poland has been a key member of the Three Seas initiative, a key contributor to the Three Seas Investment Fund, which is why it's especially good to ask Mr. Jablonski what Poland considers as the next big steps for the Three Seas initiative on the political, but also on the practical economic level.
Well, indeed, this is the right moment to ask such a question, because we are in the crucial moment. After the success of last year's Tallinn summit, now we are on the road to Sofia. And Sofia is probably going to be another breaking point, because we are looking at very strongly growing interest of our external partners. We have noted big support from the very beginning of the United States, and we are very glad to see that it did not only did not change after the new administration has taken over in Washington, but it actually improved, and there is a bipartisan support in the US for the Three Seas initiative. It was reflected both in President Biden's statements and Secretary Antony Blinken involvement in a government-level meeting 2 months ago, and also in Congress, where there was a unanimous resolution supporting it. We also note growing interest from other countries, also from Europe, but also from outside, from Asia. So it is now our duty to create an offer for external partners, to attract them, to get them closer, and to bring the investors, to the private capital, also here. On coordination level, as you said, it is very important that we increase the frequency of meetings on the governmental level. I'm very satisfied that I'm taking part in it myself personally. And I think indeed, as we are moving forward, we need to focus on structurizing the ways of our cooperation so that it becomes more and more institutionalized as all the 12 member states will decide. Then another very important matter is some potential new areas of cooperation, because we are focusing on three pillars that are most important, namely digital, transport and energy infrastructure, but there are also other potentially unexplored areas where we see growing interest. That is, for example, regional cooperation, and Poland in June is organizing a regional summit for the regions of 3 Seas that will be encouraged to work together, maybe on some smaller scale projects, but those projects that are able it will be more easy to bring the initiative into the hearts and minds of people, and that is our goal for the nearest future.
Well, Minister Jablonski, thank you for exchanging views with me. As you said, the 3 Seas initiative is more than just the political and the practical aspects of it. It is a project that is regionally and globally relevant. You mentioned the European Union aspect. I think it is extremely important. Last year's summit also included a presentation by the Commissioner of the European Union. You mentioned the interest of partner countries, the United States, but also Germany. Interest towards the 3 Seas initiative around the world, from Europe to Asia. I think this is all noteworthy, means that we are only getting started. Thank you for joining us, and Sandra, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both, Mr. Vseviov, Mr. Jablonski. And if I may just wrap up your wrap-up, what I learned from this panel was the word synergy. You both mentioned synergy between the public and private sector, synergy between the EU countries and the 3 Seas countries, and the synergy between the 3 Seas countries themselves. So thank you so much for this inspirational political background, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Now, however, it is time to take all that background information and dive into the operating principles of the 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund. For that, I give the floor to Mr. Tiit Riisalo, the member of the Supervisory Board of the 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund. But first, Estonia has prepared an introductory video on the fund, and Mr. Riisalo will continue shortly after.
The 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund is an ambitious partnership between the public and private sectors supporting the development of Europe's fastest-growing region. Located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas, these 12 EU countries are home to 111 million people. Their economic growth has outperformed the EU average by 67% in recent years. But they need better connections and smarter infrastructure to meet their growing needs. These projects can be funded from different sources: state budgets, EU funds, private equity, and also investment funds. These countries have now combined their economic might and political will through the 3 Seas Initiative, which inspired the 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund. The fund is supporting profitable cross-border infrastructure projects in the energy, transport, and digital sectors. This isn't just raising prosperity in the region, but also improving cohesion and helping drive growth for the whole continent, while contributing to a cleaner, greener future. This complements the EU's existing growth strategies and carbon-neutral targets. It's also aligned with the best international practices for how to leverage private capital investment into infrastructure development based on high standards of transparency. The 3 Seas Initiative Investment Fund is open to both public and private sector investors, ranging from national and international finance institutions to pension funds and private equity funds. It has the potential to raise 3 to 5 billion euros in capital and has already received significant strategic support from the 3 Seas Initiative participating countries and financing from across the region and around the world. But politicians don't decide where the money goes. All investments are managed according to the best commercial practices and selected based on their economic potential through a transparent process. The fund is advised by Amber Infrastructure Group, an independent international investment manager. The 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund aims to be a model for growth around the world by showing how partnership between the public and private sectors can finance large-scale cross-border infrastructure development in a commercially profitable way. And it's already working. The first investments by the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund are currently underway, and more will follow. Learn more about the 3Cs Initiative and the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund.
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you follow us from our beautiful planet. Also from my side, my name is Tiit Riisalo. I am, in this context, the member of the supervisory board of the 3Cs Investment Fund. And the saying goes that one picture tells more than 1,000 words. So I hope these 2.5 minutes of moving pictures explained the basic operating ethos and principles of the 3Cs Fund well. But I still would like to use some of your time and some words to stress some key points over, because the fund is now operational for more than a year, but there are still some misconceptions. So let's go over them. The fund, sole purpose of the fund is to develop infrastructure of the region, which in turn requires large-scale investments. And the fund operates in the 3Cs area, which means countries that lie between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Sea in the eastern part of Europe, but in the meantime, the members of the European Union. The focus of the fund is on energy, transport, and digital sectors, and specifically on the cross-border projects on these three sectors. And last but not the least, it's politically inspired, but commercially driven. To explain this, then the 3Cs initiative was born from the initiative of the presidents of these member state countries. But the fund, while established, will not get some sort of instructions, or not the decisions are made in the capitals, but by the professional investment managers and fund advisor. How we see the role of the fund. Of course, as I said, the sole aim right now is to develop infrastructure in the 3Cs area, but we also see this, if the fund is successful, it as a role model or a proof of concept for further same kind of funds, and then maybe already outside the EU borders, for example, in our eastern partner countries, which all need also major infrastructure investments, and meantime are a crucial part of our world. What is also important is that the fund does not compete in any way with existing EU financing instruments or models, but to complement them. And what I try to achieve, of course, with this, that it gives more visibility to infrastructure needs in Central and Eastern Europe. As it has been stressed already, it's more than $1 trillion. But meantime, it increases cohesion and certainly is in line with EU growth strategies and policies. And last but not least, I touch it very briefly. Speakers and panelists after me will already go into more detail, explaining what is the current status of fund, what has been already achieved, and what might be the future perspectives. But we are planning to raise in the fund 3 to 5 billion euros. And what is most important is that is going to, in our vision, it is a major model for private and public partnerships. And why is the public part important is that, as we all know, doing cross-border infrastructure projects is a huge task. And we hope that with the 9 Free Seas countries already invested in the fund, we demonstrate that we take it really seriously. We put our skin in the game, and we hope it assures private investors from all over the globe to invest in the Free Seas area. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riisalo. It was a pleasure to meet you again. Thank you for this presentation. And I guess we all took those numbers from it, 3 to 5 billion for the fund. That's quite a lot. And I believe it is really good that you emphasize that the decisions are not politically made, but rather by independent experts. Now, however, I have the honor to give the virtual floor to Mr. Gavin Date, who is the CEO at Amber Infrastructure Limited, the exclusive investment advisor to the Three Seas Investment Fund. Mr. Date will explain the processes, how potential projects are selected and evaluated, how investment decisions are made, not politically, and how potential investees should approach the fund. Virtual Mr. Tate, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the Estonian government for hosting today's session, and my apologies for not being able to attend in person, but I've greatly enjoyed listening to the earlier discussions. As just was mentioned then, my name is Gavin Tate. I'm the CEO of Amber Infrastructure, and we've been working on the fund as investment advisor for just over a year now. So if we could put up the first slide, please. Thank you. So just a couple of words on who Amber is before we talk about the fund. We've got about 140 infrastructure investment professionals in 11 offices around the world. We manage 7 infrastructure funds with a track record dating back prior to 2006, when we launched what is today a €3 billion plus global fund listed on the London Stock Exchange. In addition to that first fund, we manage a number of specialized funds focused in sectors including energy, efficiency, and digital. We've originated and managed over 150 investments over our long history, and a third of those have been greenfield opportunities, which is a specialism of Amber. If we now focus a little bit more onto the fund rather than Amber, the Three Seas Investment Fund is domiciled in Luxembourg. The fund terms will be familiar to those pension funds and life companies that typically invest in infrastructure across the world. The fund has been designed to appeal to all investors. All decisions taken by the fund are naturally driven by the commercial terms, which include achieving a target level of return of 12 to 15% over the 15-year life of the fund. We're targeting opportunities in the digital, transport and energy sectors, particularly in assets that are either greenfield in nature or require significant capex in order to achieve their growth ambitions. The fund size is just under €1 billion, and as Teach just mentioned then, we've got a target size of 3 to 5 billion euros and also a 5-year window in which to deploy that money. It's also worth stating that Amber is investing up to 10 million euros in the fund as well, which will be deployed side by side with private sector investors. And that is obviously a significant demonstration of our own confidence in the fund and what it is about. It is also worth saying that there are significant co-investment opportunities available for investors, and that's an interesting element of all because it effectively increases the firepower of the fund beyond its target size. We estimate that actually if we do achieve that 3 to 5 billion euro target size, it may actually result in us investing up to 25 to 30 billion euros in infrastructure once those co-investments and the debt that we also will put into our acquisitions are taken into account. Over the last year, we've built up a significant team and now have team members present in Vienna, Prague and Warsaw, and that team is growing all the time with another 2 senior hires due to join in the next couple of months. And despite the travel restrictions imposed by COVID, we've been very active in the region over the last year. In fact, I know 3 of my colleagues have just flown out of Tallinn yesterday, and one of them is not expected back in the UK where he's based for the next 2 to 3 months because he's traveling around the region and looking for opportunities. Zoom and other platforms, as we know, can only take you so far. It's those final face-to-face discussions that can never be beaten, especially if you're trying to close an actual deal. It's also worth stating that beyond that regional team, we also have a full Amber resource of over 140 individuals available for the fund. And the faces that you see on that page on the presentation are those within Amber who are currently purely working on the origination function. It doesn't feature those who are providing asset management services or finance services to the fund. So all in all, it is a huge operation that we're undertaking. It's also worth saying that on the right-hand side of the slide are the 5 members of the investment committee of the fund. They're comprised of 2 people from Amber, 1 from Fuchs, who is the Luxembourg-based manager of the fund, and 2 independents who were selected by Amber. And one of the early questions from potential investors is whether the fund and its investment decisions can be politically influenced. And we can reassure them that the investment process is completely independent from the countries themselves. Now, sourcing of the opportunities comes through a number of different routes. The countries themselves prepared what is described as a priority project list, and we're engaging with each of them to determine whether they're able to be invested by the private sector in their current form, and if they're not, to provide advice as to how this might be achieved. The fund is only able to invest in assets once they're all through their development phase and ready for construction. So as well as meeting the fund's investment criteria, we do need the projects to have their necessary permits and approvals. None of these priority projects are at this stage yet, but we very much hope they will be candidates for possible investment soon, and we'll be doing all we can to help them get to that stage. We also invest in opportunities that we source through the wider market. And as the fund has established itself over the last year, there are a lot of inquiries from incoming companies to us as well, seeking our assistance to help them expand across the region. You can see from this page that we have reviewed 126 opportunities across the region to date, broadly spread across the 3 sectors of transport, digital, and energy. These are funneled down through the various reviews. Do they meet the objectives of the fund, which includes demonstrating cross-border benefits? Do they meet the commercial requirements of the fund? And finally, and almost always the most challenging, can we reach acceptable financial terms to invest in the companies, assuming they have passed all of those previous points? This exercise is hugely time intensive, and that's why we have such a big team involved. The fund has now made its first investments, and I can recall when I spoke at the Estonian summit back in October, we were frustratingly just a couple of days away from being able to announce our first investment. So slightly delayed, but that first investment was made, and that is CARGOUNIT. It's a rolling stock company that currently has 175 locomotives and significant ambitions to expand across the region. The finance provided by the fund is intended to assist with those growth ambitions. Last month, we closed €130 million financing for the company to make the capital structure more efficient and assist the expansion of the fleet into new geographies across the region. And the reason for picking CARGOUNIT as a very good candidate for the fund, well, there's obviously a huge drive across the EU at the moment to improve the rail network and transfer freight from road to rail, both for efficiency reasons as well as to meet the carbon reduction targets. And we believe that CARGOUNIT will play a central role in delivering these objectives for the region, and also will be a significant beneficiary for this drive. We followed up that initial acquisition in December with an investment in Greenergy, which is a data center currently being constructed just outside of Tallinn. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this investment because you have the CEO of Greenergy speaking in a moment, and Ular will be able to speak much more eloquently than me about the potential of the project. However, we'll be completing the construction of the facility in the coming months, invest in the platform so that we're able to convert the strong sales pipeline, and then our intention is for the fund to support the management to expand the Greenergy platform across the region. And that's a theme that you'll see throughout each of our investments. We're less interested in single assets, but rather investing through strong management teams who've demonstrated their expertise and track record. We want to invest through them to expand across the region. So we've made some exciting investments in the transport and digital sectors. And I'm afraid, just as was the case in October when we had signed CARGOUNIT, but we were unable to publicly speak about it until actual close, so the same thing has happened again in the energy sector. I can say that we have signed an agreement with a significant renewables platform, which has existing assets in a number of countries across the region, but more importantly, has an extremely strong management team and an impressive pipeline of opportunities that we expect to convert over the next 2 to 3 years, furthering the drive into sustainable energy production, and of course, enhancing energy security. I'd invite everyone to keep an eye out on our website and press in the coming days when we will disclose this investment. So in the short time I've had, I've only been able to provide a small flavour of what we're about. But there are contact details on this slide, and of course, we're able to be contacted through either the 3Cs website or Amber's own website, should you wish for any more information. Thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Mr. Tate for this virtual presentation and explaining how actually the scrutiny works and how thorough the process is, so we know that the money is going into right places. Very much looking forward to the energy announcement, and I'm personally very pleased that sustainable energy is a priority. But now, let's introduce you to the new man on the stage, Mr. Yllar Jaakso, and we go as practical as possible with the next presentation. Mr. Yllar Jaakso is the founder and CEO of Green Energy, who was just mentioned recently, the second company that the fund has actually invested in. Mr. Jaakso will share his first-hand experience and offer valuable tips on securing the investment from the fund. Mr. Jaakso, pleased to see you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start my presentation. My name is Yllar Jaakso, the CEO of Green Energy Data Centers. And in less than 20 minutes, I will give you some learnings, some insights, and also some failures we made during the process. The key story, it starts from the deep belief that we can actually live in much more greener world than we live today. What I mean by that, as a universe, we are very, very hungry. We are a data-hungry society. What do I mean by that? If you take just 1 minute of the internet, you will see how many tweets, emails, likes, swipes we do there. And if all the prognoses are correct, then we're going to produce just in 5 years more than 200 million DVDs of data per year. I remember DVDs. They used to be very, very heavy data carriers. But this data hungriness comes together with more and more hungriness on top of that. And with that, we're going to generate a world where in the last 10 years, we have created 5,000% growth of data. And currently, we have more bytes in our real universe than there are stars in the observable universe. This volume requires energy. We are using constantly more and more energy. If you look at the figures for the energy consumption during the last 50 years, we have grown almost 5 times. But at the same time, the prognosis for the next 5 to 10 years show that in the field of the ICT, in the field of the connectivity and data centers, this growth will be specifically fast. And this green part of the right side column will show you that the increase of the energy is substantial there. But can we avoid the digital infrastructure? Definitely not. it is our daily fun, it's our daily communication, socializing tool, but it's also the tool to have a better green vision and green future for us. What do I mean by that? Because of the digital infrastructure, we can actually increase our productivity, what actually saves some part of the world. We can have much smarter connectivity, less paper, less transactions, but also we can have the reliability secured. If you bet so much on the digital infrastructure, we better make sure it is as secure as possible. But also, the sustainability could be improved with the help of digital infrastructure, because the data are the source of learning where we do mistakes, where we spend too much, and also the data is the core source for forecasting the future and our future needs. And to match the future needs gives us back the connectivity, reliability, and productivity. Therefore, data is the new green. If you're looking for the source, how to get more greener, make wiser use of data. If you want to do that, then maybe we can actually endlessly enjoy moments like this, catching the fish from the fresh sea, one of the 3 seas of this region, or cooking that outside with the friends and enjoying the clean food, clean nature, and the strong friendships. This is the beginning of the G story, but now going more practical. Our ambition at the Green Energy Data Centers is to relieve the hunger for the energy efficient and sustainable data centers in the Central and Eastern Europe. This is a quite ambition, and we have to plan it step by step. We have to move with the very practical steps forward. Why this region? This region is absolutely perfectly positioned to be the champion of the smart connectivity. In order to confirm that, let me give you a few examples. Growth. Growth in this region is definitely faster than in the neighboring countries, in the older Europe. We have seen that during the last 20 years, and definitely we will see it in the next 10 to 20 years as well. Cross-border connectivity of the systems, services, business relations is required, is a must, because none of those countries is large enough to be focused only in internal needs. Therefore, any country in this region needs to cooperate with others and have actually strong dependencies from the neighbors. The green vision, this is actually agreed. All those countries in this region are members of the EU, and they are sharing the values to achieve those climate goals, what we have been agreed on the EU level. And also, this territory is a greenfield territory. What it means, there is a lot of opportunity for new investments and for many, many investors to look at this region. I think it's now the first time when we see this region branding itself, structuring itself as a one region, and that makes this region even more attractive, both for the investors but also for entrepreneurs, because you can easier manage your processes under the same system of values. What is our action? As I said, we're going to build the data center facilities in CE, and with that we're going to lay the ground for the smart connectivity. Our first step is the purpose-built, modern, modular, and the green data center in the Baltics, the region of 3 countries. That's how it looks. This is currently under construction. We have finished the main construction part. We are currently installing all the technical system, and then the hard work of commissioning starts, where all the steps and all the elements implemented needs to also be checked and verified in order to host the highest standards possible who will be our customers, whether they will be from the national government's defense industry or the big players from the hyperscalers. We are ready to host any level of that. What is the size of this data center? Few boring figures. The campus we have built is actually up to 32 megawatts, what is by far the largest capacity available in this region for one data center campus. The first facility you just recently saw in the picture, this is up to 6.7 megawatts. How much is it? Let's say in this territory, in this country, in Estonia, current largest is probably close to 1.5. We are actually building the facility 4 times, even 5 times at the size of the current largest. How many space there will be? The first facility is 14,500 square meters, but this campus is ready to host 2 more facilities at the same size, growing together with our customers up to 42,000 square meters. And starting from the capacity of 42 3,000 servers, close to 1,000 plus racks. It enables us to grow with our customers over the next 10 to 15 years 3 times. Basically, partnering with this data center, every customer, public or private, can ensure that actually they're going to enjoy this secure system with their growth up to 2 to 3 times. And this is a match with the perspective of the data growth at every business. Quality, level 3 security, reliability, and also up to level 4. There is no currently every level 4 facilities in this territory. Definitely full infrastructure redundancy. Connectivity, we are absolutely carrier and cloud neutral. Our business is to serve the special facility and enable all the telecom companies and connectivity providers to compete for the service to serve the customers who are going to be hosted there. The most important number for us as a company is the power utilization efficiency, the PUE, what is 1.2. What it means is that if the current industry rate is 1.7, 1.8, then if 1 unit is used for the calculations for the servers, then the rest of used to maintain these servers, cool and to maintain them secure. We would don't want to spend more than 20% on the top of the valuable energy, and that will be 2-3 times less than the current historic systems. And also, we would like to use only green energy, and this is luckily available here in Estonia and in the Baltics. And also the waste heat is planned to be reused, making that a most effective green data center in the region. Compliance, very short numbers, but behind every number there is a very specific set of quality standards and the process standards we need to apply for. I think for us also important is the new code of conduct for the data centers with energy efficiency targets in the EU, what we also are going to apply. Value proposition, we serve co-location services, private suites, data vaults. We serve all sectors of the society. We are going to build up the list of the value-added services, but also it will be the home for the ecosystem of that environment in the region, collecting together the players of that segment and enabling them to share the experiences. Also, we would like to be the home of clouds. Nowadays, every IT infrastructure requires the mix of the enterprise solutions and cloud solutions, but also the cyber security. We cannot forget about it, and hopefully our home will be the home enabling discussions around it and putting more effort on top of that as well. And our first priority region is definitely Estonia and Baltics. Then we're going to focus on the CE, but those houses are ready to host our customers from the Europe and the rest of the world who needs to get closer to their customers in our region. So, value proposition, smart, secure, sustainable, and future-proof. With us, yours probably have the smallest possible ecological footprint and the highest reliability. Now to the investment. What do we make to get the investments from the funds, especially maybe even from this fund? And here I'm going to share with you a few insights and maybe even a few of my own mistakes during this process. Hopefully you can avoid them those. Why we decided at all to partner with the 3C Initiative Investment Fund? In order to realize your ambition, your vision have to have some courage, some vision, and some resources. And if you're going to look for the investor, then make sure that you find a fund who actually has the same courage, the same vision, and same resources. Deal match on the at least 5 most important components was actually a really good one. Territory is a perfect match. Industry-wise, there is also match. Know-how, especially the post-deal process has proven to me that it's a perfect match as well. We have received a lot of valuable advice and support from the investment partner. Deal size, this fund enables actually to launch very ambitious projects with very high tickets, and this is also a match for us. And the investment period, such a capital intense projects, they need longer periods than 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, even 10 to 15 years, because that's the valuable lifetime of those assets. And this is also a match for us. That was a very good reason to start to work with the 3C Initiative Investment Fund. How does the process look like? Let me start from the few things what it doesn't look like. It's definitely not a loan. It's definitely not a grant or subsidy. If you think about the the EU structural money, then very often those terms get mixed. But it's not the administrative process. It's a proper hard work and money talks private equity valuation process. You must be ready to match all the requirements of any private investor. As it was said many times during the previous presentations, both by Mr. Dieter and Kevin Tate, it's a politically inspired, yes, but it's commercially driven. First steps for me, before even starting this journey, was I started to think as an investor, because without thinking of that, you cannot attract them, and you have to think big. Small projects are not valuable because the administrative cost to go through the pipeline, analyze all the cases, analyze all the risks, make the deal to happen requires substantial amount of money. And with the small cases, the investment case becomes negative. It must be a real size project. And you have to build an invincible company spirit. The spirit you're going to need through the process of getting this investment, but also the getting the investment to work under the capital expenditure time, but also getting the spirit ready to host finally the customers and all the business difficulties you're going to match. And you have to start rather with consultations. Don't start immediately with negotiations, because during the consultations, it's much easier to correct your plans, your estimations, and your initial thoughts, because this is the partner model you're going to create. It's not going to be a trade model. And also try to meet personally, despite the COVID-19. I know it sounds not easy, but that's definitely required input, I would say. But then the process is nothing very different from the very typical private equity process. You go through all those 9 to 10 steps. In my presentation, I will focus on 3 of those, where I think the risk of failure is the highest for the entrepreneur. And let me give a few tips for that as well. Letter of intent, that's the beginning of the cost phase, where after that, both parties will start the hard work and deploy the teams to go through all the details. You negotiate the purchase price, but respect the risk. The risk what will be taken by your investment partner is as high as your risk, and therefore you have to give a fair value for that. Also, post-capitalization structure, be creative on that. Try to find solution for every risk type in your capital structure as well. Time needed to provide binding offer, be conservative. Don't underestimate the time there is needed. Plan reasonable time for that. Fund experience and expertise, just be open to that. You have to know what you're doing, but you also have to be able to learn and correct. Value creation strategy, for me, I think that's the most fundamental to agree, and that moment of the process, because that is something against what you're going to compare all the red flags, all the findings, all the issues, that the fundamental value creation strategy will not be hurt. And also compatibility with the team. There has to be a human chemistry and trust. Without that, no partnership will survive. Operating model, this you need to know by heart, but it has to be very highly detailed revenue and cost breakdown model. And this is something what you have to also fight for in all difficult moments. It has to give a clear picture for all decision makers. Make sure that you benchmark your model against the best practices in the industry. Don't aim anything lower. Investment decision, I think that's the final most important step in your process before all the hard work of closing. It's you have to learn this process very well. You have to know how it's done by your partner, and you have to make an effort to build your own fan club as well at the other side of the negotiations, because without internal fans, nobody's going to fight for a case. You probably will drop to the lost deals category. Innovation, that will make the difference. Your company business plan and your way of operating should make some innovation as well, because that's what will differentiate you and will inspire. And be ready for multiple rounds of the investment decision. Don't give up from the first answer. And be a true entrepreneur in that sense. Inspire everyone to continue to work hardly on the find solution. Learnings. Be patient. Process is the process. Can't be avoided. I know many entrepreneurs, especially from the startup industry, they would like to move in the speed of the fast train. But here, it's a good train. It ends to the destination, but you have to give the time for that. Be also persistent. It means the focus on the vision, Never lose it from your sight, and every other aspect just tied to that, and many questions will be solved with help of that. But also be proactive. Don't be on the last seat of the car. Try to hold the wheel and lead the process and make sure that everybody contributes as a first priority to this project, to this investment analysis. That's the main topic of that. And to summarize my insights and my learnings, you only need one idea to get the investment. You probably need to work through 100 models to find the right one. Most probably need to know by heart at least 1,000 details of these models to be able to answer to any questions what any member of the team could ask you. Probably you have to spend before that around 10,000 hours in this industry to learn all the tricks and failures. And you have to aim at least for 1 billion of money to be made in the end as a value of the company. If you manage to go through all those insights and these numbers, you are probably on the right track, and your ability to get the investment is rather high, I would say. Finally, why we do that? 2 fields, 1 brown, 1 green, both of them needed for us to currently. But investments you're going to ask are probably get more attention if they're going to move from the brown field to the green field, in the both meanings. Green field, it means the new investments, new infrastructure build, but also having more impact on our climate and giving us better, greener vision. And in order to do that, in every aspect of your model, of your operation, please insert into the smallest chip of your operation the green thinking, the green mode, the green KPI, the green action plan, the green value into it. Maybe then one day, once we are all done that, we can enjoy those kind of pictures for a longer period. Like in old days, just go to the forest, pick up the berry, and never think of that. Was there too many cars driving by passing it, or were too many planes flying over it, or somebody dropped some bad chemicals around it? Just enjoying the clean nature based on that. Thank you very much. That was my presentation, my insights, and I hope it was helpful. And please contact me. I have more insights one-to-one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ylläriakso. This was really insightful. I think we're going to get a lot of more investment requests. I especially remembered the respect the risk, be patient, but also be proactive and be also persistent. That was really amazing. And as we all know, actually the data server centers are currently the biggest use of energy globally, or electricity globally. So if we can make them green, such as the Greenergy is, we can really save our planet. But now, our next speaker will join us from Latvia. Mr. Reinis Persins, the chairman of the management board of Altum, will give us a practical example on how to fund an ambitious transport infrastructure project. Please, Mr. Persins.
Your Excellency, Mrs. Kaljulaide, distinguished guests, it's a great honor to be here in this conference, and I'm very glad. And first of all, I would like to say thank you to all my Estonian neighbors, to our colleagues, and particularly to my colleague Titin, Supervisory Council of 3Cs Investment Fund. I guess my story will start from the broader sense, and I will look why we actually have this interest on the fund, why we went through during those years, and finally we also invested in the fund, what we are looking on the projects, but then I will zoom a bit on transportation, which is something which I asked to do, and I will give also a case study. So briefly, this is my story, what I will try to do in those couple of minutes. So before I zoom, I will try to go through the first slide and just some kind of information about what we do. So we are state-owned financial institution, similarly like several others here presented. We are rated by the Moody's, and we are very glad about our rating because our rating is just below Latvia's rating A3, and there is no other state-owned company or any other private company which has a higher rating than we do. We operate in accordance with the law of development finance institution, as well as we have EC's regulation on our mandate, and basically what we have a mandate to operate where there is a market gap. But what is the problem? Very shortly, that's the reason why actually here, because what we see is like to operate with this in this mandate, in this framework, we have a quite small thresholds for different services we provide. Our main target till pandemic crisis was SMEs, and if we are talking about loans, then only 3 million euros. What was the threshold what we could provide ourselves, or together with the banks, the mezzanine loan, we could provide up to 5 million euros. So that's the reason, if I put this like a fast forward, on September 2018, we signed a memorandum for this fund, for creation of this fund, together with only 5 more countries. And actually it started in the summer when colleagues from BGK, Beate, and I always admire how she's like an engine. She and her team is like from BGK, like an engine for this fund. How fast this creation of the fund took place. So after signing of a memorandum, next year it was also creation of the fund. And Poland and Romania were among those first 2 countries. And I guess we were among also those who are very active. We created mini conference here in Riga. Afterwards, after a couple of months, there was a positive decision of the government. And basically, together with Estonia, we were 3rd and 4th country who joined this fund. And now I'm very glad to see that there is a lot of more, right? So this is very briefly where we stand. And you can see clearly the reason we joined the fund, because we see that there is a great thing how this fund could give additional value to our economy. If we are looking now here, and I always say, usually I say that, and also I said that the same in our mini conference Latvia, when Latvia joined, when Altum joined, we will always say, very good this cooperation, but from our perspective, internal rate of return for this fund, this is of course crucial thing. But the second thing, as I already mentioned, we joined because we see that it can give additional value to Latvian different projects. And you can see here those 3 fields: transport, energy, digital infrastructure. We made a kind of drawing of all those projects which are interested or already submitted to this fund. There are projects which are dealing with transport, with some road. There will be one particular with a railway. Then there is also something in digital infrastructure, data platforms, fiber network, create a roll-up, and so on. With energy, we have examples like with La Flora project, which is interested in creation of a wind park, and of course also LNG project. I will go with the next slide. I hope you can see that. So here is some things which comes into our mind when we are talking about getting finances to those projects. First of all is combining different fundings, because most likely this fund will not be the only answer, and I will elaborate on this issue in the next slide a bit more. Then what we also have noticed, it's very crucial to have support from local municipalities. And if we are talking about roads, railways, it's I guess obviously clear. And for example, the same could go to the railways, for the Rail Baltica and roads. When you are building that, of course, there is a lot of also talks with the municipalities and also the local inhabitants, the local people. In the same time, we see that there are a lot of projects which are in very good cooperation with municipalities. And lately, I guess before 2 weeks, I was informed by the La Flora, this major wind park creator. It's already existing firm which will make an industrial park near Jelgava. And they already have said that they have very good cooperation with this municipality, Jelgava's municipality, and by creation of this industrial park in amount of something like 180 million. Then 2/3 could go with this wind energy park. And actually, I'm very glad that actually La Flora, a company from pure private sector, this is not state-owned company, La Flora private sector, it was the first company who signed NDA with our colleagues from Amber. And then cross-border cooperation. This is the thing where actually I can elaborate a bit more, that sometimes we see quite good projects, right? And this number could be much higher than I showed in the slide before. But there is a lot of information how we can show that this is a green project, that it's have a good IRR and so on. But some of those projects are missing cross-border cooperation aspect angle. And then we said, please also get once again with us or with Amber when you have also answers to this, because at the end of the day, this also is one of the crucial things where project is interested to invest too. Next slide goes particularly for funding infrastructure, and I can give this transportation angle, looking from transportation point of view also, but also it goes for other fields. And I do affirm the thesis that actually with international financial institutions, this is not something where there should be some jealousy or, I don't know, overlap of business or something like that. I would just even say that it's complementary or synergy. Because we have also talked in a transportation sector with the management board of Latvian roads, Mr. Lazdowskis, who is also very deep in several of those project negotiations with international financial institutions regarding Tekavas PPP project, bypass project, which is quite famous here in Latvia. And what we have also seen in this case, that there's a lot of those possibilities to attract a loan, for example, till up to 90% from different institutions, right? And if you have a project like Tekava or project something similar like that, where you could have like 100, 150 million euros, then if the biggest money comes as those institutions or other private sector money, then this equity part is quite low, right? And it's still about the millions, but it could be like 10 or 12 or 15. It's something where you could have a lot of possibilities to attract serious equity thing. Right, but here the same example. If we are talking about the roads, if they are making big bulk of the projects in amount of 400 or 500 million euros, that would be more interesting. There is those big institutions who provide with the loans, and then there is, for example, fund, Amber Fund, and we have talked together with Latvian roads and from Amber, Joy Phillips, right, and it was understanding that something like, for example, Via Baltica project, if there will be something like 400 or 500 million euros, different projects put together, then fund could be very interested in. Then, of course, also some private sector money come in, but actually in Latvia, this is not a very typical case. Small venture capital industry, you have to be frank. Some private investors, but of course, banks could be the ones, but it's a long-term project, so not very often also banks look on that. And of course, public funds, including our one of the bright stories during COVID time, Capital Fund of Latvia, where we are together with the pension. Still, I have to be frank, our account operates again with the threshold 10 million euros, so we can help, but not solve all those finance needs. Let's go further. And now I will go to the one more case, and case not like just mentioned that, but I will look on a bit deeper way. We can see Rail Baltic, I guess, a project where we are familiar with, right? And I will skip, for saving the time, I will skip all the historical part and why it's needed and so on. Just we'll look that there is a project from Latvia, Salaspils Logistical Center, right? And you can see Rail Baltic, and looking from the Baltic's perspective, if you are looking on Latvian numbers, you can see costs during upcoming years, and again, an impact also. You can see that the cumulative effect on GDP by 2025 will be close to 2%. And this is not me just to say that, this is also a very reliable source. It's Bank of Latvia. And you can see also on Latvian case and Baltic case is almost 3 times more this impact, positive impact than the costs. So this is great. Some more information about whole Rail Baltic project, which you are very familiar, I hope so. You can see that there is, of course, a great travel time savings, also air pollution reduction, noise reduction, travel safety increase. You can see all of those good things are here, and they are put into the monetary terms, right, in billions or hundreds of million euros. And you can also see that, for example, there are other economic benefits in almost 3 billion euros. And I also have to underline that here is already taken out, for example, the buses or airlines, this turnover, which will be missing because, for example, I don't know that the Rail Baltica train will come from the Tallinn to Riga and then to Vilnius. Those clients will migrate. Altogether, this is already like a bottom line with huge benefits. And we know this project, and we know that it will happen either with this fund or not. But there are different side projects, and I'm very now glad to show you one of those side projects which can actually happen or cannot happen, and it will also be depending on different type of ways how to attract finances, including, and I want to underline, including also today's topic, 3C's investment fund. So you can see here also a case study of transport project Salaspils Logistics Center, as I promised, and you can see that the total investments is just below 200 million euros. Those estimations are quite rough, but in the same time we know what we have this information and what we receive from project submitters, that it's a bit below 200 million euros. You can see the portion of public finances, and you can see also private equity, which is at least a need for 34 and actually more million euros for those latest thoughts. What we have heard, it most likely will be more. But anyway, so this is a portion which is also needed. On the right side, we can see, I guess, very crucial thing that actually in 3 years' time from the starting the project, you will have a positive EBITDA, which is quite important for such a great project like this. And if those numbers might not seem so huge, right, for this side project, and you can see also this estimated forecast of EBITDA, you can see EBITDA margin, which is very high. You can see this 25%. I'm just looking from as a banker, from our perspective, we like projects already with 10, 15 and a bit more. This EBITDA margin, I guess, 25 is considered to be very, very good for a big project like this. Let's go further. Sorry for some detailed information, but as I promised, I want to also give some more numbers because I do believe in numbers. And if we are looking on case study a bit deeper way of the Salaspils Logistics Center, we see also return on equity for 20 years could be more than 8%. Of course, from finance perspective, we could to have a bit better those ROI numbers. We could try to squeeze up on, I don't know, 10 years, and then you would have, like we have calculated this return on equity, something like 12%, and for 15 years to be like in the middle, above 10%. But anyway, I guess this is not the most important thing. I guess those 20 years are fair enough, and this is also something that we have discussed with Amber, and they said this could be okay. Once again, we see that there is a break-even point in the third year, so we are very glad about this situation. So quite a good example of the project what could be, as I said, Rail Baltica, but then is one more side project. So if I need to make some kind of conclusion, at least in those 15 minutes I had, I just try to show you our expertise from quite small company development institution, but we are quite proud one, right, in Latvia. So why we are interested here in this fund, not only our internal rate of return of our investment, what we will get from the fund, because we are investor. We are very interested in practical point of view, right? The project is the name of the game. We have a lot of good projects in different phases, starting from quite green with very detailed information, right? Then I move to the transport and just try to clearly show you that in a big picture, like Rail Baltica is a big picture, there might be some good projects which will happen just because also this great fund is here. So thank you very much, and I'm looking for a great project for this fund and also a great fruitful discussion later on today. Thank you.
Paldies, Mr. Berzins from Latvia, who believes in numbers. At least I wrote down a few things for myself. If the last speaker told us to be proactive, then Mr. Berzins told us to look for combining different projects from different fundings, look for support from local municipalities, and look for cross-border cooperation. I hope you jotted down some notes for you. But now, our next speaker is from further down the Baltics and will join us from Lithuania. Mr. Justinas Bučis is the Head of Strategy and Business Development Department at the Public Investment Development Agency of Lithuania. And also, he's a member of the Management Board of the 3C's Initiative Investment Fund and will introduce us to the developments of the energy sector in Lithuania. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you a lot for your kind introduction, and I'm flattered to be here, invited by our Estonian colleagues. Also, I'd like to thank our Estonian colleagues for this great format and the event. Using the opportunity, I also like to thank the Ministry of Energy, which helped me to prepare for that presentation and expanded on the energy markets in Lithuania. If you have any questions for this presentation on in general for energy sector in Lithuania, please do not hesitate to contact me with the contacts in the closing slides, and we'll revert you or find the contacts that will get you there. I will start my presentation with a short introduction of VIPA, which is a core shareholder in 3Cs Fund and is heavily involved in 3Cs initiative. So VIPA is a Lithuanian national promotional institution, which is working for already 9 years. And we have developed more than 11 funds and financial instruments in different strategically important fields and areas in Lithuania, and finance more than 900 projects overall, while mobilizing more than 680 million euros of investment. We are fully owned by Ministry of Finance, and we employ more than 70 professional employees from the public and financial sectors. Also, while we mobilized investment, we mobilized them from different sectors, from public, from private. Most of those investments are being directed to the green funding investments, part of that being highly rated by Moody's as highest green investment in Lithuania. Speaking up about the energy sector in Lithuania, I hope that my presentation will inspire some interregional cooperation and to have some discussions in Lithuania about possible investment in 3Cs Fund. So Lithuania in the last 2 decades undergo very broad transformations in energy sector because of some vulnerabilities in geopolitical sector. Thus, until 2020, there were a lot of projects implemented in order to become energy secure state, which allowed us to connect to Northern and Western Europe with energy links, both electricity and gas networks, as well as build Klaipėda's LNG terminal and start a synchronization process with European electricity grid. By 2030, Lithuania is planning to become competitive energy country, having the most competitive energy prices and while using renewable energy sources. By 2050, Lithuania is planning significantly increase energy efficiency projects and use of renewable energy sources. Those aforementioned goals are planned to achieve by strengthening energy infrastructure and doing that by integrating gas transmission systems into the regional markets and completing the Poland connection, as well as enforcing the connection between Latvia with the cooperation with the other Baltic states and countries and Finland. As well as the electricity sector has to undergo certain changes in order to finalize synchronization process with the European continental electricity grid, probably faster than it anticipated in 2025. So current government is planning to do that by 2023. It's also, the Lithuanian government is planning to exploit possibilities of already existing electricity link capacities, building new Harmony link net connection with Poland, and also implementing some balancing and emergency power reserve facilities. There's a huge potential and huge focus put on the green energy sector in Lithuanian energy independence strategy. And one of the major goals is to have at least 50% of electricity being produced from renewable energy sources, increasing that to 80% by 2050. As well, Lithuania is implementing a very unique and interesting prosumer scheme and structure where and is planning to have every third consumer to produce energy for self-consumption from renewable energy sources by 2030, and increase that part to 50% by 2050. In the final energy consumption, renewable energy share should increase to 45% by 2030. And although we have already quite good figures in renewable energy source production in heating sector, which reached 70%, but until 2030, there is a plan to have only 10% of heat production being produced from non-renewable energy sources, and to fully produce all the energy for heating sector by 2050 from renewable energy sources. Most challenging sector in terms of renewable energy source use will stay the transport sector, and we already started some negotiations and discussions with Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Energy, to develop mobility infrastructures in Lithuania to focus on research, development, and innovations, energy, and in different technologies, including hydrogen, and to expand use of green energy. In my last slide, I would like to give you maybe more figures of what is planned to be achieved during next 5 years, and maybe some of the figures are until 2030. Current government has very ambitious plan to implement fast and synchronization process with the European electricity grid by 2023 rather than 2025. And this will also lead to quite sizable investments in terms of additional connections, energy accumulation capacities, storage capacities, which I'll mention later on. In terms of onshore wind power plant capacity, there is a plan, Lithuania is planning to achieve a goal of 1.2 gigawatt capacities to be built by the end of 2025, which means that in 5 years there's a need to finance more than 700 million megawatts, more than 700 megawatts of additional wind power plants. And more ambitious goal is in the solar power plants area, where solar power plants is envisaged to reach 1 gigawatt capacities by the end of 2025, which means that we need to build additional 860 megawatt solar power plant capacities in 5 years. And as you understand, those capacities will need quite sizable investment. In order to mitigate all the vulnerabilities coming with renewable energy sources installations and also emergency services needs, Lithuania is planning to install electricity storage system to balance the renewable energy sources and to further strengthen the capacities of Lithuanian energy infrastructure. There's also plan to not to focus only on the production of energy, but also to focus on energy consumption, and actually to achieve 20.4 million terawatt hours savings by the 2025, which is a very ambitious goal, and there definitely will be need of new solutions and quite sizable investment in terms of modernization of current infrastructure. As already mentioned in the last slides, and I encourage all the countries, Baltic countries and participants from the other countries to explore our Lithuanian unique solution for the prosumers, where Lithuania is planning to have every third energy consumer to become the prosumer by the end of 2030. We already met some of the project developers in hydrogen production, and we see a very huge potential in this technology, and even some of the opportunities for investments from this 3Cs fund. Lithuania is planning also to implement measures to prohibit unsafe electricity use, and we see that there are unsafe electricity production in Belarus from nuclear power plant. So those solutions should be finalized and introduced by the end of 2021. In terms of offshore wind investments, there are a few milestones envisaged. So first of all, by 2024, Lithuania is planning to finalize all the documentations, analysis, researches needed in order to start physical investment. By the end of 2027, the new connection between the shore and offshore wind power plant should be finalized. And by 2030, there will be a huge need to install a 700 megawatt capacity of offshore wind power plants, and that would be associated with at least 1 billion euros of investment needs from private sources. On top of that, to also strengthen the energy sector in Lithuania, there is a plan to expand Lithuanian Kruonis hydro accumulation power plant expansion in 2025. There are a number of other activities which are planned to implement in order to achieve those goals that I mentioned in my slides before. But I really encourage you to contact me or Ministry of Energy directly to expand on those possibilities. And if you have any kind of questions to this presentation, or any questions to energy sector overall in Lithuania, I really encourage to contact me and or VIPA, and we'll try to answer your questions or find some correct persons in the Lithuanian institutions to answer them for you. So thank you a lot for your attention, and thank you again for Estonian colleagues for this opportunity.
Ačiū, Mr. Pučis. Thank you so much for this high-level overview and for the ambitious presentation on renewable energy in Lithuania. Very much looking forward to seeing those plans coming to reality. And now is the time to move over to the next phase of today's event. But before, I would just like to pick one sentence that was presented by Mr. Vseviov earlier today, which is, whoever wins connectivity wins the 21st century. So it is indeed a race. But now, before we move on to the next part, there is a really interesting video that we would like to show you, and then we have a very special surprise with very high-level panel awaiting.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Since Churchill made that speech, the world has changed dramatically, especially here between the Baltic, the Adriatic, and also the Black Sea, where a new partnership has descended known as the Three Seas Initiative. The Three Seas is made up of diverse EU member states. Their stories are unique, but they all have one chapter in common. For half a century, they were closed off from the rest of Europe by the Iron Curtain. We can still see the effect of that today. While Western European nations are deeply intertwined through energy and transport links, the nations of the Three Seas remain relatively disconnected from each other. But we are now writing a new chapter together in which millions will benefit from new investments and smarter connectivity. In fact, the Three Seas region has already become a driving force for economic growth in Europe, outperforming the EU average by 67% over recent years. To turbocharge that growth, the Three Seas is now combining its political will and economic might to significantly improve its energy, transport, and digital infrastructure. Their focus is on smart connectivity to create new opportunities for future innovations. That includes improving data exchange to make more efficient use of information. By taking decisive action now, the Three Seas will continue to drive economic growth in Europe and strengthen both our competitiveness and our relationships across the world in this chapter and beyond.
Welcome back. And now I have the honor to invite you to an outstanding hybrid panel. It's a discussion led by the President of the Republic of Estonia, Kersti Kaljulaid. This panel will cover the future of combining public and private sector funding in infrastructure investments with input from, and here comes a lot of titles, from Vice President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Pierre Heilborn. Then we have the President of the Nordic Investment Bank, Andre Kuusvek, Director at Operations Directorate of the European Investment Bank, Sandrine Crozet, and Beata Daszinska-Muzicka, who is the Chairwoman of the Supervisory Board of the Three Seas Initiative Investment Fund and President of the Management Board of BGK. Madam President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandra. I will now step into your shoes and try to do my best in this role. Indeed, I think we have just seen an ample demonstration about the potential of the Three Seas region to unleash the capacity of development stemming also from cooperating between these 100 million people of the region, not only with cooperation with our Western counterparts with whom we have been catching up. I believe we have well used that opportunity, and we have underused the other opportunity to work among ourselves, to make ourselves a powerful economic region. Indeed, the infrastructure deficit in Central and Eastern Europe is restraining our development, our growth, and also international unity. And the solution here is in finding ways to create trust, create transparency, so as to make large-scale cross-border infrastructure investment attractive to the private sector as well, in order to boost economic growth and increase cohesion and security, while not indebting our budgets further than they are already indebted. The strength of democratic forces relying on the market economy is our private sector. and we must create space for the private sector to invest. We are the enablers. Private sector is someone who has the resources, and also to a certain extent they are cross-checking on the good ideas on practical project level. Because if there is no return in the investment, if there is good project which politicians think is necessary, but there is no return on investment, private sector would not help us. But with all the projects where there is return on investment, I believe as governments we should step aside and become enablers. So we need trust, and Free Seas initiative is a presidential format putting indeed a lot of visible political power in support of the initiative. And we need a role model to realize this power into economically feasible projects. I believe that Free Seas Initiative and Free Seas Initiative Investment Fund has the capability to provide us with this model where public and private sector work together and where public support will result in private sector trust and therefore development for the whole region. I have a question to you all. Do you share my dream? Maybe I'm totally on the wrong track, who knows? I think we will start with maybe Pierre Heilbronn to give the floor to those first who are geographically removed from us, but I hope feel connected as we are here together. So Pierre, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, President, for this very kind words. And I absolutely share the views you expose on the infrastructure deficit in the region and the importance of closing this gap for economic growth. You made a very convincing case, I found, that there is a substantial gap in infrastructure provision and general transport integration in the Three Seas region relative to the EU 15. This is a clear barrier to economic integration growth and is a crucial priority for European integration and convergence. Just a few facts to even go further in underpinning what you said. The 2020 IMF report on infrastructure in Central Eastern and Southeastern Europe provides a comprehensive analysis of this issue. This infrastructure gap can be observed in a range of physical indicators, including lower electricity generation per capita, lower internet subscription rates, lower road and rail network density, and access to air travel. EBRD's own analysis of transition progress also points to this direction. For instance, just to give one example, travel times in CEB and SEE countries are around 56 to 100% longer than they could be due to indirect routing and slower average speeds than observed in other countries with better developed networks. There is a similar gap in the performance of the rail network due to poorly integrated services and general lack of competition in rail service. So I will only end my answer to this first question saying very much also supporting your statement about the fact that this gap cannot be closed without private sector finance. This will not be surprising coming from the EBRD, very much focus on private sector. And to attract private investors, a high level of transparency and information over project selection, design, demand, and risks are crucial. So very much I would end on this positive, optimistic, obviously message, but also demanding message on transparency and collective action.
Thank you, Pierre. I would now turn to Beata, also from our Free Seas region. So did your heart warm to the words which were said, and do you share also our dream?
Dear Madam President, thank you very much for having me here and today, and especially congratulate this great event and the Estonian idea how to boost awareness about our needs in this region. And the Three Seas region Maybe 5 years ago, so nobody knows this name. What is the Three Seas region? Today, we are almost all aware what is the Three Seas region and how looks our needs. Let me start with the bigger view. We are witnesses and we are facing the big global crisis in the world. And now is the time, and probably we are all aware what is the time for better collaboration, working together, the private and public sector. Without this cooperation, it won't be possible to recover our economy. And the Three Seas Fund and the Three Seas initiatives, it is example how it is possible to work together and address these huge needs. As Mr. Hilbrun talked, the huge gaps that we have in infrastructure, how we want to build the connectivity, how much time we have to spend to visit Tallinn, for instance. Yesterday I had to fly by Frankfurt from Warsaw, so you can imagine how we miss our last time when we have number of flights to visit our countries. And what we need desperately is to build these three sectors, logistic, transport, energy, which means that we are focused on the energy security, but we want to focus not only the security, because we have to think about our next generation, how we protect our environment, how we build the green energy in this region, and also the new, very important sectors, digital sectors, which we need twice more money to spend comparing to the money that we have to spend for transport. Can you imagine if we think about the roads, rail, and the logistic hub and so on, you can see the huge amount of money. But if you compare to the money that have to be spent twice more for digital ICT infrastructure, so we see it is a huge challenge. I am very proud that the first digital infrastructure is placed here in Estonia. I visited today this absolutely fantastic investment. It is an example of how we can think about our cybersecurity in this region through the investment in the ICT sector. 600 billion euro, it is a huge challenge, and have to encourage the public sector, the private sectors, and the international financial institution. And on this stage, I kindly ask the international institutions which are present here today, as EBRD and EIB, to join and help this region to build through the Three Seas Fund, which is called the Three Seas Fund. It is an example of initiatives which combine the political inspiration and the commercial driven. So we want to invest together and we want to work together to address all this, our needs.
Thank you, Beata. Now over to you, Sandrine. Do you also think we have maybe creating here a viable model of being indeed politically inspired, but also economically feasible?
Well, thank you very much, President. Well, I would like, of course, to thank you a lot for inviting us to this very inspiring conference. And we at EIB, of course, are following with great interest the progress of this initiative. And of course, we are very honored to be able to join today. I think already a lot of key points have been made by the precedent interventions. For me, what I would like to add is that the interesting part of this investment is actually twofold. The first is it's about cross-border project and cooperation, which is, of course, something which is unique. And then secondly, we are now, because of the global pandemic that is still not over today, in a very different situation from which we were when this initiative was launched. And we are facing, on the one hand, a huge need for recovery, to have investments to build not only the immediate recovery, but also the future recovery of Europe and maintain its competitiveness, and also to indeed ensure the shift of our economy to a digital economy and a green economy. And therefore, the timing of such an initiative seems to be very, very pertinent. And then, of course, like for every big project, then you have also big challenges. And I think my colleague Pierre already mentioned this in the beginning, of course, and yourself as well in your introduction speech. The instrument has to be transparent. If we want to have private investors on our side, we need to make the governance of the structure very similar to what they expect, so that we have a balance of power within the infrastructure. And of course, we need also to be visible to them in terms of strategy, in terms of return, and also in terms of exit, which is also something which is very important. But for us, as I said, it's a timely instrument, and of course we are very much looking forward to see and to support the development, of course, of the project that it will support. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, André, what do you think? Is this what we are doing having some potential?
Madam President and colleagues, I think it's difficult to disagree here, and I would go back and underline the opening word, the connectivity. I think connectivity is very important for the markets, for people, all the way down to the individual. Connectivity makes markets bigger. Connectivity transfers know-how. Connectivity enables trade flows, investment flows, and so on. And I personally think that the 3Cs initiative is something which kind of gives a new dimension, the north-south dimension. When we look at the history, then much of the trade has taken place all the way starting from the Silk Road that I know very well firsthand, kind of on the west-east axis. But I think the north-south is very important. And having worked in this region for the past 30 years, sometimes it's almost mind-blowing how over the past 30 years the countries have made a significant political transformation, and the economic model is now very different and more efficient. However, if you look at the infrastructure, be it the physical or be it the digital, I think we are still lagging behind. We need to have something that connects us and makes us bigger jointly, because the growth in the global growth of this planet at the moment is really happening elsewhere at the moment. It's happening in Asia, it's happening in America, and I think for us to catch up, we need to build a road. Let me go back to the Silk Road and remind of an old Chinese proverb, which is that if you want to become rich, then you need to first build the road.
Thank you indeed. Since we have now already in 10 minutes roughly established that 3Cs investment fund is definitely worth the investment from all supranational bodies who are represented here today, then I think it's now time to take the picture wider. I honestly believe that the 3Cs initiative has the potential to show how we could further here in Europe and in our closest surroundings, thinking also of Eastern partners and Balkan countries, how we could actually create the first model by this first 3Cs fund, which would then serve also other societies who have similar ambitions and similar aims, to create something which will allow political and social development of a country with this concrete, rather rigid financial discipline of private sector investment. And I believe that private-public partnership discussion was very loud 20 years ago. Everybody was going this way. Then it kind of got subdued, mainly because, public money became incredibly cheap. Private and public money today cost exactly the same, means nothing. So some people may have thought that PPP is not so important anymore. But we know that the discipline of managing a project is still the edge which private sector has over us in the public sector. Hence, in our mind, PPP is obviously worth doing. And if this fund is successful, I think it may have the potential to be used as a role model. But what should we keep our eyes open about? And this is now the question to our supranational partners, EBRD, AB, and Nordic Investment Bank. What should we do or not do to prove our concept and our point so that private investors who invest in the Free Seas Fund will be indeed interested in the next generations following the same role model? So this is a question to EBRD, AB, and Nordic Investment Bank. And I think let's start then again with EBRD. Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And it is a fundamental question. EBRD has just celebrated its 30th birthday, and since we were established, we supported around 1,200 infrastructure projects worth 40 billion euros. Around 40% of these infrastructure projects have involved the private sector. So very much the question you raise about how we can crowding the private sector into infrastructure project is a question we've had accumulated a lot of experience, sometimes extremely good and with huge achievement, sometimes much more difficult. So I think reflecting on this experience can be useful, I hope, for your ambition and our ambition around the 3 Cs initiative. Our experience showed that public-private partnerships can generally provide substantial improvements to the efficiency of project delivery. You've been very eloquent in mentioning that, because PPP's projects are less likely to be delayed, are generally dispersed more rapidly, and generally also have better levels of cost controls. So all that is very much has to be valued. However, these projects are complex and need to be designed and managed carefully, because private sector finance is highly sensitive to risk. And that's why minimizing risks and providing a conducive and stable business environment through strong governance and project implementation support is really vital. Private sector involvement generally works best when there is a large pipeline of projects with similar characteristics and risk profile, which justifies private sector engagement and enables benchmarking and development of a portfolio of assets. That's why the critical mass also is an important one. Last point I would mention also drawn from my experience is that public perceptions of private sector involvement must also be managed very carefully, because excessive profits or expensive changes in scope can undermine public support for private sector involvement and attracting private capital. So project selection and award should consider whole of life costs and benefits and be undertaken against a robust public sector comparators to ensure value for money. And that goes back to the mention I was making at the beginning, and our friends also from the EIB and the Nordic Investment Bank were making, which are about the conditions to make this private sector more or less viable, based very much on continued transparency.
Thank you. And over to Sandrine now. The same question. What should the fund do or not to do to become a successful role model? Please.
Okay. So Pierre's answer was already very, very comprehensive. What I would add, because we are also talking, as I said, about cross-border investments. Our experience at EIB is that cross-border investments, also under a PPP model, are, let's say, the most difficult to bring forward. And this because you have an additional challenge to every normal infrastructure investment, which is the difficult coordination between two or more countries who need then to align their priorities. And so in practice, what we often see is that you might have one side of the border relatively well advanced because maybe it's a priority of the government, maybe there is more budgetary space to bring this forward. And on the other side of the border, then the other part of the project might be much less advanced or even not progressing, just because exactly the opposite reasons. Well, maybe it's not the priority, maybe there is not so much money. So even before considering a PPP, for example, or an investment, what is key is coordination and project preparation. And those infrastructure investments are very long-term. They are very expensive. And of course, we at EIB, what we do, but like every private investor, before investing, of course, we check the economic profitability of the project, and we check if this, let's say, it will yield also a social dividend to society. Because if you invest public money, you may be happy if you have a positive return on your investment, but actually your primary interest is that it helps society. So this is something also that, in my view, the fund should pay attention to. It's, on the one hand, an asset, because if you have the governments also at the table, then you have a possibility to achieve this alignment of interest and a better project preparation. But on the other hand, of course, you need to be able to convey to the private investors that you have also your view on what could be a dividend, and which can be a social one, but also, of course, a financial one is necessary. Otherwise, you will not get the private sector on board.
Thank you. And that was an interesting grain of thought, Andre. I mean, could you maybe go a little bit deeper into this? Because I don't know about you, Beata, but I personally think that if we have a project, our project portfolio is mainly politically motivated to, propose these proposals, then you would take the social dividend element as granted. Do you really? I heard that maybe we need to prove ourselves even more there for you.
I'm glad you're raising that point. Coming to the fund level, I think sometimes to do something great, you need this big bang. And maybe the fund is the big bang. And now about this, the fund, I would say the most important is you have professional fund management, you have professional advisors on the case, and then you have hopefully professional investors, including both private and public sector. When we take a step back, I think what matters in the end is really at this level of individual projects, because that's when the rubber hits the road and the reality and the dreams hit the reality, and sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't. I would say on an individual project level, you always need 4 key components. The first one is an identified need for what you are trying to offer. Secondly, you need a vision. And I think that vision here and the need has also been identified here this afternoon. But the vision can be political, but it can also be private initiative. Then you need the management, the skills, and then finally, of course, you need funding. And I think on these last 2 points, it's very important that there is a private sector lead, that the projects get tested essentially with private sector risk appetite. And I think that is which essentially will differentiate over time the success from the failure. One point, if I may, on the PPPs, I think it's an important element, and it's more complex than it sometimes looks. I think on the PPPs we need to check that it's not only the cost of the funding, i.e. the cost of the construction, because the cost only has a meaning at the specific moment of time. And what we often see is that, yes, of course, the governments could borrow more cheaper than perhaps the private sector sponsors, but there is a limit how much they can afford in terms of the overall debt, in terms of the debt service, in terms of their annual budgets. And I think the PPP is the element that, if done correctly, and even in this panel there is enough expertise around, if done correctly, I think you can get things done much faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And now, Beata, you are the chairwoman of the supervisory board of the Free Seas Initiative Investment Fund. So did you hear anything? You made a mental note about this is something which I will now take care that we can assure our investors in.
The 3Cs fund was created, of course, after the 3Cs summit, inspired by the 3Cs summit political level in Warsaw. And we as a financial institution try to find the way how to support these brilliant initiatives as a financial institution. Because the financial institution are trustworthy institution. Because people leave the money in our institution because they believe us. We have experience how to invest, how to be responsible, how to spend money very responsible way. So when we start to create the 3Cs fund, we met with the financial institution, our counterparts in all countries in this region. When we encourage our colleagues from this region, let's support these brilliant initiatives, but on the private rules and the market rules, especially we know how to spend the money. And from my perspective, it is how we can encourage the private sector, because the investor in the 3Cs fund, there's mainly the financial institution. We are involved in many different international investment activities, investment fund, and we are fully aware that the money have to be spent very responsible. And we are the role model how to create this cooperation, how to build this cooperation through the regular meetings, through the convince the others that is a common needs and we understand each other better, and the responsibility for this money is our common aim. So today I'm very, very happy, and there's huge satisfaction that fund is fully operational. Very professional institution manage this fund, and we have discussion with Andre. Okay, there is a lot of money, there is a lack of projects. Dear audience, we are looking for the money. We have a lot of projects and very fantastic, honest company who manage this project and manage the fund. So this is the space, and this is 3Cs fund, it is huge financial vehicle, so it gives you the entrance to the entire region, how to address all these our needs and spend your money in very responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Beata. We have still a few minutes to play an interesting game now here. I will try to match the declared objectives of each financial institution present to the objectives of our fund and see how do you see these two things click together. First, I would turn then to Pierre Helbron, and I would ask, the EBRD is holding an annual meeting entitled Building Back Better Economies in summer. How do you view building back better within the framework of investments in the energy, transport and digital sectors? Please, Pierre.
Thank you. I would start maybe by mentioning two or three things linked to the context we are operating, and obviously the impact of the crisis, which has a dramatic impact on our region, and you know that also in Central and Eastern Europe. And according to our regional economic prospects, growth in the EBRD region contracted by 3.6% in 2020 and by 4.4% in Central European countries. So these figures are better than expected, but it has required major government stimulus to cushion the impact on individual and businesses. This has also shrunk the fiscal space for governments to invest for infrastructure gaps. So addressing this gap is really crucial in building back better to stimulate demand. And it is also a huge opportunity, and we heard also earlier during the day, the potential for greening the economies and supporting inclusive economic growth. As such, building back better theme you mentioned resonates very well with our framework, which is for the next 5 years to support green, inclusive, and digital economies. We are looking to support the transition to a green, low-carbon economy. And by the way, we expect green finance to be more than 50% of the business of the bank. We also promote equality of opportunity through access to skills, employment, finance, and services for women, young people, underserved communities. And we want to accelerate and help our countries of operation adapt to the digital transition, which is so crucial to unleash the power of technology. All of that should ensure also that we build more or less a just transition, particularly in the sectors you mentioned. We cannot leave behind regions or individual businesses, because otherwise it will bounce back and probably be politically unacceptable. So there is a lot of opportunities. I think, at least when you were asking about EBRD, we very much see this bright future about finding the right set of incentives to channel more private sector finance to meet pervasive and increasing infrastructure, or decreasing infrastructure gaps. And we really believe that focus on quality and not only on volume is also a very important objective, because we want to support projects that lead to low life cycle costs. And André was very to the point when he mentioned the fact that we should have a holistic view even when we approach the cost of infrastructure. And we want to generate equitable access with the highest regard to environmental and social impacts.
Thank you, Pierre. André, prosperous, sustainable Nordic-Baltic region. Does investment into Three Seas nations infrastructure help your bank achieve your objective?
The very short answer is absolutely yes. There are two big pillars on which the mandate of NIB is standing. One is the increased productivity and therefore competitiveness of the region, but it has its elements also outside the region. So NIB is investing globally. And the second pillar is their environmental sustainability. And I think they link very nicely with the three key themes here. You know, digitalization, transport, and energy, and each of those gives a very significant potential efficiency for productivity, and it also gives a very significant potential environmental impact, you know, be it in terms of CO2 savings or otherwise. And again, if one looks at the map, you know, we are so close together, in fact, on the bigger picture. And perhaps there are too many borders in between. So if I would have the right and the authority to redraw the maps again, then I wouldn't draw the borders, but I would rather draw something that unites us.
Thank you. Sandrine, I mean, your bank in 2019 was among the first ones to make very clear that you are breaking away from our not so sustainable development habits of the 20th century. And thank you for taking that leading role. I believe the whole financial sector globally has been following these clear words. And you have approved a set of targets for climate action and environmental sustainability. Do we fit in with our Three Seas Fund into this objective?
Yes, indeed, we have approved very ambitious targets. We have actually three of them. So the first is to support investment in climate action and environmental sustainability of 1 trillion euros by 2030. And then we have also decided to increase the share of our financing dedicated to climate action and sustainability up to 50%. It will happen gradually by 2025. And then, which concerns then all activities, so not only the 50% green, if you want, to have then all our activities aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement, because then our approach, coming back to let's say the concept of social dividend, is then to say, okay, we consider that our contribution needs to be positive for future generation, positive because we have only one planet, but also because we know that sustainable investments actually are on the long term better investments in terms of financial returns. And then also because in terms of inclusiveness, we also know that actually climate change is going to increase the differences within society. So this is how we see it, and how then does it fit with the strategy of the 3Cs initiative? Obviously, we have points on which we differ. For example, because of this commitment to the Paris alignment, the EIB has decided no longer to finance gas projects, with very, very, very little exceptions. And we will have, for example, also a more restrictive approach to roads, obviously, which we were no longer doing anyway. We will not finance also coal-related investments. But there are plenty of topics on which we can collaborate on the individual projects, because obviously it's clear to everyone that in terms of energy in Europe, we have a lot to catch up in terms not only on green energies relating to the existing technologies like solar or wind, but also on everything which still needs to be invented or at least industrialized, like for example, hydrogen. Then on the transport sector, again, there we might have a bit more restrictive approach because of our decision to concentrate on climate supportive projects. But when I see in the very nice list of projects that you have on the website, there are plenty, for example, of rail projects. There are plenty of projects with municipalities. So maybe, on public transport, ports. Those are things that EIB is of course happy to continue supporting. And then, of course, last but not least, on the digital side, there, at least for so far, we have not seen any particular restrictions. We know how critical the infrastructure development is in the sector. We know that the economy has to get more digitalized. And if I may, I was actually particularly impressed by the presentation of the green energy project. So congratulations to that project, because I think it's a very nice one. Well done.
Thank you all participants today, and I believe that Beata and her team and also my team feel that all this hard effort we have been putting into the 3Cs initiative has actually started to pay off, and our digital transport and energy sector related dreams can come true through this kind of cooperation with private sector. So we now remain hopeful that since the investment period is open into our fund, that we will be able to fulfill our dreams, reaching billions to invest into this quickly growing, prosperous region of 3Cs. Thank you once more, and thanks for everybody for joining us, and stay with us. Thank you.
What a panel. So interactive and so enthusiastically chaired. Thank you, Madam President, and the rest of the panel. What a wonderful afternoon it has been. We heard some insightful presentations from some absolutely amazing people and covered a variety of topics, such as how the 3Cs initiative transforms Central and Eastern Europe. What are the operating principles of the 3Cs investment fund, which enjoys political support, but is free to make its own decisions? How potential projects are selected and evaluated, how investment decisions are made. Hint, it's not a political decision. And we have also looked at an interesting case study from Estonia. We got an overview of how to fund ambitious transport infrastructure projects. We know a lot more about the developments in the energy sector in Lithuania. And we just witnessed a substantial exchange of ideas on the future of combining public and private sector funding in infrastructure investments. Thank you for chairing again, Madam President. It has been a fascinating day, and we're all a bit smarter than this morning. I personally know I am. Just in case you'd like to refresh your memory or rewatch some parts, don't forget that all the content and much more will be made available on the 3cs.eu. Thank you to all the participants, speakers, viewers online, organizers, and everyone who are working tirelessly for the goals of the 3Cs initiative. I'm sure that the 3Cs will give us a reason to meet again. Thank you again, stay healthy, and take care.